book, knowing that I'm going to burn some bridges because I just say how it is. And then back then I hoped that I'm going to be rewarded because some people will open up when they appreciate my honesty in the book. And it did happen. I lost a lot of friends because of the book, because I'm writing, true stories about true people. I just changed the names, but they know it's about them. But a lot of people open up for me that, sometimes CEOs of big companies, you would never think they went through something similar, but they never could share it because it's a publicly listed company. They're not allowed to say anything, but they open up to you in a one-on-one meetings. And it's having a book like this is better than MBA or PhD. Best business card you can have, for sure.
I love it. Let me ask you this. So on your website, you have a foundation link, and I love what you're doing with the students. Looks amazing. They look super happy. And here you talk about in the area, I believe that where they are, in the last 2 decades, there's been more than 20,000 people murdered and over 2 million displaced, with 300 girls that have been kidnapped and put into slavery.
Yeah,
I see this around the world. What most people are just starting to wake up to is understand that this is really going on. Obviously, this is, 20,000 people haven't been murdered per se in America, and this is in one smaller area. What do you guys need to really make the impact on these kids' lives, and what do you do for them to support them, and then why? Like, why do you care so much?
Yeah. Well, obviously I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to tell you how the whole foundation came about. It was also not planned. I knew I don't want to just publish the book for the cash, mostly because I didn't want to be accused of making money off what happened to me. Because when you're doing this for the money, you might be accused of having the wrong motivations. So I was like, okay, I'm going to put the money into charity from whatever I'm going to make on the book sales. But then I approached the whole industry of NGOs and wide definition of charity, just like I approach businesses, like an investor. Show me your P&L, show me your cost structure. How are you spending that money? What's the ROI? What's the long-term, effect of your operations? And oh my God, when I learned how the charities are operated, I was like, I'm never giving those guys money. I mean, let's just stop here. I was like, if I want to give money to a charity, I have to have full control over it. It's going to be a very small one because it's just my money right now. But maybe it's good that it's small. Maybe it's not about building huge structure. Maybe it's better if more people have a small charity that because it's more efficient. The less people involved, the smaller chance of corruption and stealing the money and so on and so on. So that was the first stage. Then my girlfriend came and she said, "Oh, you want to do a charity? Let's focus on girls." And she said, because when you focus on girls, you're selling 3 things. Educated women have less kids in poor areas, which is good. If they have kids, the kids will also be educated because the mother will make sure. And educated woman has a higher chance of entering a business or working for someone. And I think there's been enough data that shows that more women in companies make better companies. So that was it. And then I was like, so where do we start? And I said, I want to go where no one else wants to go. I want to go to the most fucked up region in the world. And I didn't have to look further. If you are born in this region, which is Maiduguri and Chibok, a city and a village in Borno State in Nigeria, you are so screwed on so many levels. First of all, radical Islam, the position of a woman is not too high in the society. Then you have Boko Haram, who are killing people and kidnapping girls and turning them into wives. Then you have this poor village with no electricity and no power. Doesn't matter how talented you are, what kind of a mathematic genius you are, if you're born there, your chances of having a normal life are close to zero. So I was like, I prefer to help even 1 kid or 5 kids, but I want to help those guys that no one else is like looking at. And that's how we started. And I found a foundation that is operating there from Nigeria. We've been working with them for a couple of years. Then I was talking to my friends from World Bank. They put me in touch with World Food Program. They also have their 8 workers there. Then we found a school who was a school only for orphans. And we started sending just small amounts of money. It started with a couple of $100s just to see what they're doing with it. And that's how the relationship built, But it's super tough. With COVID, you can't travel now. And only 2 days ago, if you check Google, if you check the news, 4 aid workers were kidnapped by Boko Haram and essentially executed. That's the news from 2 days ago. So it's super, super tough. But I'm doing this because it kind of keeps me in check. Sometimes when you live too long, too comfortable in the States, you just forget how fucked up the world can be just a couple thousand miles away. It keeps me in check and appreciative of what I have and how freaking lucky I am when I see those people, just couple miles away, really.
How many kids do you actually have in that area that go to that school?
The school has 90 kids. I mean, it's lower. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more.
Are they all
because
ages?
not every kid can work in families. They're not raised by parents, but by some foster families.
What ages are the students that you guys have there?
The youngest is 5 years old. Last time I checked, the oldest are like 16, which makes it hard because they're one big class. Yeah. So how can you teach 5 and 6-year-old at once? But you got to start somewhere.
So do they have power, electricity, Wi-Fi in the area?
Wi-Fi, forget about it. Not yet. Power, it's from the grid, so it's usually a couple hours per day. We're probably going to invest in some solar energy and then batteries. Actually, my company can send it. The problem is who's going to ship it and deliver there. But when we started, they didn't even have enough chairs, so we started by buying chairs, and putting a roof because they were just sitting on the ground. So super tough. But then again, maybe the fact that it's tough, it's also what keeps you motivated.
So there's a guy the founder of 5 Hour Energy. Have you ever heard of Manoj?
No, unfortunately, I didn't.
Check him out when you get a chance. He's got a bicycle that you can pedal for 1 hour, and it creates 24 hours of electricity.
Oh, okay. 5 Hour
Energy.
Energy. Okay.
He's based in America, but he does a lot in India. He's a I don't know if you'd say a retired monk, but he was a monk in India, and then he moved to America. And pretty awesome story. His podcast or his documentary is called Billions in Change. But pretty interesting guy. I showed up to his office one day to go meet him. He's out of town, but I flew in. But eventually I'll meet him. I love what he's up to. But I agree with you that what people say is, oh, we'll send him money. We'll send him this. We'll send him that. The problem is they don't know that the money's getting stolen. Or how do you ship something there to make sure it gets there? And then even if they set up the solar panels, how do you know that somebody's not just going to come in the city and rip them off?
Yeah. Exactly.
So,
you don't want to send stuff, because if you send stuff, essentially what you're doing is you're making bankrupt the local guy that could sell it or could produce it. It's this paradox, When you're sending money, someone can steal it. So it's like both sides have risks,
Kind of like, what do you think about Tom's shoes? So the idea in the beginning, great concept, love it. He would send, 10, 20,000 pairs of shoes or whatever number. I don't know the exact number, but I've heard different stories to different areas, and it would put the whole industry out of business of shoemaking for months or years.
Yeah.
But great passion, great story, right? How do you overcome that kind of challenge?
With technology. Right now in Kenya, you can have a mobile wallet. You give the kid a phone. The kid wants a phone anyway. I'm talking about cheap feature phones. You don't need a smartphone, just a normal feature phone like the old Nokias. And you send money directly to this kid's wallet. And in Kenya, mobile wallets payments are more popular than cash already. So the kid goes to the shop and buys whatever the kid needs to survive. I don't know, like milk, food, notebook for school, whatever. And you know what he bought because you're going to get this in a statement. If he buys, Gucci bag or Johnny Walker, something's wrong. So that's the only way. Technology can bring transparency, and that's what you need.
So,
but you want to send money, not gifts, because gifts take out the local business.
So I agree with you on nonprofits. I've seen a lot of nonprofits. They invest money. For instance, my nonprofit for, let's say, 2019 will have less than 10% admin fee, right? So I try to keep it around anywhere from 5 to 7% a year. But it's really impact, right? There's a lot of impact going into it. What's your opinion with nonprofits? Like you said, you looked around how they spent their money. what I find a lot of time is people get into nonprofits, but then some nonprofits pay massive salaries, which I don't have a problem with, a multi-million, $100 million nonprofit paying their CEO, a 7-figure salary. I don't have a problem with it based upon you have to have somebody that can understand how to operate at that level, and they have.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So in the for-profit world, they would make 5 to 10 times whatever they're going to make, but it's there's no bonus structure, there's no different things in nonprofits. What's your thought about the generalization of nonprofits that you found?
I think the problem is that the moment nonprofits become big and they become detached from the initial purpose that brought them to life, they are more interested, and maybe more interested is not the right word because it assumes people have bad will. The inertia of the organization makes it lose the focus on solving the problems they were brought to life to fix. I mean, even huge nonprofit like World Food Program suddenly solves the issue of the hunger in the world. They put themselves out of business. And that's the problem with huge organization, is that the inertia of a big organization, the detachment of the people from the reason why they're even doing this, makes them change their focuses and not focus on the issue at hand anymore. And we see it everywhere. We see it with big pharma industry where they essentially make money by selling the drugs, not from fixing the issue once for all. And you can multiply it. And I think that one of the issues is the size of it and the detachment of it. This is why I believe that it's better if instead of having one NGO with a 1 million budget or 100 million budget, maybe it's better to have 100 NGOs with a 1 million budget, because they're just closer to the ground, closer to the problem. The people that are managing it are still more passionate, and so on and so on.
Interesting. I've never thought about that before. What do you see as the future? Because I see you're tied in with financing in Africa too. And a lot of people in America don't know what a microloan is. Is it more microloans or is it bigger investments to build business?
Africa has an overcapacity when it comes to private equity money. I mean, if you have a big company that has survived 5 or 10 years, that means you're a very robust company. You have been through everything. And you're going to have investors lining up to invest in you or buy your business. There's a huge problem with financing the very early stage of a business. And you're just even talking about microfinancing of those early entrepreneurs in those very, very poor areas. The reason is that the classical business angel model, where you're just going to help someone with $10,000 or $20,000 to start his business, does not work in Africa the way it works in West for 2 reasons. In Africa, that's counterintuitive, but you need way more money to start a business than in the States. Because if there's no infrastructure you can use, you can leverage on, you have to have a lot of things to figure out on your own. I mean, renting an office in Lagos, you have to pay 1 year up front for the rent. You can't just have a co-working. I mean, you can have co-working now, but 5 years ago, there was no co-working. You couldn't rent and pay per month. I had to have stable power because we had 100 people on their laptops. The power from the grid was only for a couple hours per day. So I had to have a generator. It cost me $10,000. And then I had to fuel it with gasoline for like $5,000 per month. I had to figure out those issues on my own. So starting costs of a business are way higher. Then in the West, who you want to invest in? Who's the most likely to build a business? Someone that has already finished high school or university, ideally, maybe worked for a couple of years for someone. So he has built experience. He already knows his industry. He wants to open a business. And for sure, he comes from a middle class. So even if something goes super wrong, he can at least go back to his parents and maybe crash at their couch for a couple months until he gets back on his feet. People like that don't exist in Nigeria or Kenya, because if you had the money to study somewhere abroad or work for an international company, that's because you have a rich family, and they have $50,000 to help you to start your business. They don't need your money. So who you're gonna go after? You want to help those uneducated guys from the village to really help them, but that means you have to give them way more money than normally you would get up front. And it's just the Western model of financing business and ventures does not work. Micro lending is amazingly a cool business, but then again, you can't do it the same way you're doing this in the West. It's so easy to borrow money in the West. The reason for that is that it's pretty easy to then chase you for the money, right? The legal system works pretty well. You won't be able to travel. You won't be able to have a phone subscription and so on.